So welcome everyone to a Reve Today edition of the 10 question series. I'm so excited to be back again with a new episode. As you know, we tremendously value creativity, quality, and wellness, and we are on a journey to pursue these things and meet wonderful people and share inspiring stories. So Liz is our guest this week. And I am going to share a little bit more about Liz. So Liz Goll Lerner, she's a distinguished counselor, psychotherapist, and coach with over 30 years of experience. Liz has guided countless individuals and couples in creating authentic, inspired lives. As a nationally recognized clinician and art therapist, she is celebrated for her pioneering work in the field of personal growth, particularly through her innovative and integrative healing programs. Liz, thank you so much for being on our series.
Oh, thank you so much. And what a great introduction. I appreciate that.
I'm going to hop into the questions.
Okay.
So everyone knows how this goes. We have 10 questions that can either be focused on wellness, creativity, and just Liz as a professional and how she is literally changing the lives around her. So Liz, founding your practice with over 30 years of experience in counseling, coaching, and art therapy, what inspired you to start your own practice? And what keeps you motivated to continue this work after all these years?
So I was inspired to start my practice many, many years ago after working in the hospital systems as a clinician, and really found that people were focused on, what was wrong and trying to fix a particular problem. And my approach and the developing approaches over time have been really about looking at the whole person. And so I wanted the flexibility to work with people in a way that really took into account everything that was going on, especially their strengths, not just the problem at hand. Because we want our strengths to be able to support us when we have something difficult that we want to solve or heal, and so on. And then I think the second part of your question was what keeps me working in the field.
Yeah.
I think it's really exciting to see people evolve and transform, heal and change, and create different ways of being in their lives, and solve some problems, or be adventurous and create new avenues of things they want to do or how they want to live. So, that's really great reinforcement to keep doing what I'm doing.
Right. I love that. And in terms of personal wellness, we're talking about this field that, you've been doing this for all these years.
Uh-huh.
You're continuously supporting others, and that can definitely be demanding. So
Mhm,
how do you ensure that you're also taking care of your own well-being and
mhm,
keeping your cup full?
mhm, mhm. So I think there are a few different answers to that question, actually, now that I've had a little time to think about it. Um, I think the beginning of doing this kind of work, whether it's coaching or therapy, um, that is so important is good training and
Mm.
understanding how to have kind of a distance from the problem that someone else is having, being able to take it in and be empathetic, but not feel all of it at the same time, right? So that I'm not taking in, you know, person after person's issues. I'm really there as a reflector and an empathizer and a director. So having good boundaries is really important to be able to keep
Mhm.
doing this work.
Yeah.
But I think the other pieces are knowing when to take a break, um, knowing when it's time for some outside nature time, some meditation. I think, keeping oneself in a kind of a healthy frame, making sure, just the regular things that we hope everyone wants to do, right? Of eating well, getting
Right.
exercise, having fun, having joy in your life, doing things that interest you. They fill our cup, right? All of us.
Mm.
And so however hard we're working in whatever our field, we always want to make sure we're in balance. I think so balance is, I think, a really important part.
I love that. That's so beautiful. I mean, especially the part, I love how you balance the doing things that you love and also refraining from
Mhm.
certain things, setting those boundaries. It's a really nice balance. So walk us through a glimpse of some of your sessions. Um, what does a typical session look like, especially for clients experiencing coaching for the first time?
Okay. So depending on, so there are a variety of of coaching types that people can come to me for. So depending on what they're doing, um, and really actually, let me rephrase, regardless of what they're doing, we're going to do a discovery call or a discovery session
Mhm.
about why they're coming, what it is they're trying to solve. If this is a long-term thing, a short-term thing, if it's an occupational thing or a personal relational thing. And so we get the lay of the land. And so the first thing is to make sure that the person's in the right place, right? Am I someone who can really help them? Um, is would someone else be better? Is it a topic that I specialize in? So that's very important because we want people to be always in the right place. And I love referring people to the right place if it's not me. Then we set up a set of, if it's an intensive, there's a prescribed number of sessions or a number of hours that we work together organically, intensively. If it's something more long-term, we'll set up a schedule. But in terms of the actual session itself, um, we first will, in the very beginning, we'll be looking at what the vision is, right?
Mhm.
What is it that the person really wants to achieve? What's in the way? And, what's the way forward, right? And that may involve a lot of different pieces of
Yeah.
technique that I use, or a little bit more conversation about the background. We might be using meditation, integration of mind, body, spirit to get kind of a little bit deeper into, how the feeling is going on with the person. Um, and then we move toward the direction in a compassionate, strategic way. Um, and that might look like body movement. It might look like a conversation. There's a lot of different techniques that I use because I feel like when we talk about wellness and creativity and quality, there's a quality about how we hold ourselves, how we walk through the world. And I think that kind of focus and consciousness around how we do that is really important in any concern that we want to solve.
Liz, I love that you specialize in so many different therapeutic approaches. And one of those approaches is art therapy, which I love. I'm so interested in learning more about this. So, tell us more about the role that art therapy plays in the healing process with your client sessions, and are there unique benefits it offers compared to the other therapeutic approaches?
That's a really good question. So art therapy is a licensed therapeutic tool. It's a profession and on its own. and it's used in a variety of populations and settings, from disaster relief to inpatient psychiatry to working with children to working with the elderly to really it's a modality that is effective with multiple groups of people for multiple different reasons. Um, the distinct benefit, I think, of art therapy and why I um, chose that as my initial training is that it focuses on, as I mentioned before, the strengths um, that people have. So it's when people make art, the unconscious and the conscious come together. So it's very useful because even when someone knows nothing about using art materials, it gives them a voice where a dot on a piece of paper that, if someone put a color dot on a piece of paper and said, this represents love to me, or pain to me, or happiness to me, they're beginning to create a symbolic language. And it adds to the conversation of what they may be going through. And using the materials, they can also end up building the solution to what they're going through with assistance. So to give you an example from before I became an art therapist, I did a course and a training in it, and I had to go work with children at a school. And
Wow.
I had of course we were supervised, but I had a little boy in a group who kept, wanting to be in all the groups. It was kind of an open school platform. Yeah. And when he finally was able to come in, he drew a picture of a tiny little person. And next to the person was a big monster. And I didn't really know much about art therapy at the time, but I was learning and I just said, oh, tell me about your picture. And he said, the little boy can't go home because of the monster. And it turned out there were people he didn't live in such a great neighborhood, and there were people, scary people between school and home, and it was hard to get home. He was afraid. And so I said, well, is there anything you can put in the picture that would help the little boy? And he thought about it and he just started drawing, and he drew another monster. And I said, well, what's happening? And he said um, the monsters are fighting each other so the boy can they won't notice him and he can run around them and go home. So he solved the problem. It's not a real life problem, but one of the things that he learned or he solved in that little session was that he had some power. He had some power to control something about the situation. Now, maybe it was just how he felt about it, or, and so on. But what was interesting is this little boy, as were most of the kids who came into this, art therapy session, or the sessions, were kids who were either not behaving or who were very, very quiet. And he was one of the not behaving kids. And when the whole time that I was at the school, he never misbehaved. So there's a power in somebody creating their own symbolism. There's a power in working through a problem, even if you're not talking about it directly, right?
Mm,
And and this is just one very small example
yeah.
of what happens. It's also used diagnostically, and you know, for people who have trouble talking about their emotions, anything creative, and particularly art therapy, is a vehicle to help them express whatever it is that's going on. And a way for them to actually communicate with someone about what's happening. So sometimes art therapy is just making art, and sometimes
Yeah,
it's what I described, where it's art and conversation and discussion of what's going on in the work.
that's amazing. I mean, just to add, I also think it makes it easier
Mhm.
to communicate those difficult problems or those difficult challenges that
Yeah,
you might not
yeah,
usually talk about. And I mean, I can imagine, especially for a kid, you don't have all of these words to fully articulate what it is
right,
that you might be feeling, but you
right.
can draw.
Yeah.
So thank you
And
for sharing that.
yeah, and it's used with with adults. I mean, most of my practice after, a certain point is with adults,
Yeah,
18 and
yeah.
younger. And um, I think the biggest barrier people feel is that, oh, I don't know how to draw. But what's so important is that they don't have to know anything about it, because it's not the pretty picture we're looking at. It's whatever the expression is, whatever is important, which is why I started with a dot on a piece of paper. Like, that's all you need. You don't need to be able to do a big picture of something. So,
That's really profound,
mhm,
actually.
mhm. Yeah, it takes the judgment out of it if possible.
Yeah, amazing.
Mhm.
So I think one of the important questions, given the different kinds of people that you work with, from kids to adults, like you mentioned just now, when is seeking out therapy?
When
When is it
is
the right time?
to
Yeah,
go
when
to
is
therapy?
it the right, yeah, like in your opinion, how can someone recognize when it's time to actually get that help and seek out a therapist?
I think that when someone whether it's therapy or coaching or finding a support group, or there's a variety of modalities out there for people to get help with emotional difficulties. And I think when someone is uncomfortable in a way that is affecting their lives, uh, or anxious, worried, or sad every day, and they can't seem to break free of it, right? They're not
Mhm.
experiencing joy, or they feel hopeless, or they're not sure what to do in their lives to change some situation that is difficult or detrimental. That it always is helpful to at least reach out and see what help is available, because a lot of times people kind of just accept that they're not feeling good. And
Yeah.
you know to get help doesn't mean there's something terribly serious going on, but you also want to make sure there isn't something serious happening that can be helped, because there's so many ways that people can, a lot of times people might feel hopeless. Oh, there's nothing that can help this situation. And you really don't know that until you find out. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that would
Yeah,
be.
absolutely. It does. Yeah. So, okay. So at Reeve today, we have a slogan, and that is to live well.
Mhm.
So, how do you interpret this in your work and in your life? And what guidance do you offer clients who wish to pursue this fuller and more balanced life?
So I'm going to take a little bit from our previous question, because I think
Yeah.
living in balance and making sure that you're, uh, kind of on top of being, your best health, and getting exercise and eating well. I think, there's some basic things that are sleeping, right? Like, sleeping is so key to feeling good and feeling healthy, and being able to navigate stressors in our lives. when we're sleep deprived, we're more tense and more uncomfortable and easily, just distressed. So, I think that's one key actually that I hadn't really been thinking about when thinking about our questions that I think is critical. Um, in terms of uh, living well and how to um, kind of have that as a goal or pursue it, I think it's very important to um, recognize what's actually going on inside of us and being able to find ourselves present in the moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of what I have found anyway, is that a lot of people's discomfort and distress has to do with things that happened yesterday, the day before, 5 years ago, things they're worried about happening in the next 5 minutes or tomorrow or later on in the evening or
Yeah.
a conversation they have to have, or, there's so many things in our world now that people are concerned about. And we, part of the theme of all of my work really is that if we are not able to be in the body, present in the moment, not just in our heads, we really lose the ability to choose how that next minute is or how the minute we're in is, because we're not here, right? If I'm thinking about what I'm going to do after our conversation, I'm not really with you, right? I'm
Yeah.
much happier being here with you because then I can actually listen to you, right? I can be connected to, your mood or your facial expressions or what you want to know, and I'm really um engaged with you. I'm not kind of going, okay, well, this was great. And I'm going to answer this as quickly as possible. And I'm going to rush off to the next thing. Then I'm not
Yeah.
even grounded, right?
Right.
I'm not even in my body. I'm like somewhere out here. And I think that
Mhm.
causes a great deal of distress. So,
Yeah.
um, kind of to go back to your question about how I work, I have developed a methodology, a tool called the quantum
Mhm.
presence technique. And in that technique, when people eventually master that, they um, can notice when they're really not present. Most of us walk around only partially present in the moment we're living. And we believe that we can multitask in that way. Really, the brain can only do one thing at a time. So what I teach is how to get in the body, be connected mind, body, and spirit. And then the parts 2 and 3 of my technique are about how to navigate, how to master when things from the past keep showing up or things from the future, worries from the future keep showing up so that we can navigate and be in charge of what we're responding to instead of having these things come in at us and just respond to them instead of taking control. I call it being the master of your own ship,
Amazing.
right? And when we're not here, I call it leaving the ship, as many of my
Mhm.
clients know. Like, "Oh, you've left the ship. Let's come back." So, and the thing that I love is that it's easy and once mastered, it's a quick thing.
There is a desire within each of us to be more present. And I know this is a little bit off topic and
Oh,
it's not
please, please.
not within our 10 questions, but I think, just based on the conversation that we're having, what do you think prevents so many of us from being present, even though we have that desire of wanting to be present?
So it's interesting. So by the way, I think it's very much a part of our conversation anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm going to ask you a question to help me
Sure.
answer your question, which is
Okay.
how do you, when you say that many of us really want to be present, so
Mhm.
what is that? How do you know that? Like, how do you know that for yourself?
Mhm. I mean, I think for myself, if I'm speaking, within my particular lifestyle, because I think it's also lifestyle based a little bit, there are many times when I probably want to spend more time with my family, but due to perhaps work restraints or my commitment to work or wanting better for my family, it takes time away from them. So even when I'm actively with friends and family, my head is not completely with them, right? Like what you said before,
Mm.
I'm not completely present, despite the fact that I want to enjoy being present. And I think this is such an important topic and conversation because we have really important holidays coming up. For example,
Right.
the biggest holiday season of the year. And I think it's a season where people struggle with the same issue a lot during this time specifically.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I hope that answers your question
Yeah,
in
yeah, it does. It does
me.
answer. Um, so I'm going to define presence in two ways. One is being present in the moment with the person that you're with or the people that you're with.
Mm-hmm.
And one is simply being present in yourself. Okay. So,
Mm-hmm.
so being, I'm going to work backwards. So, well, yeah, I'm going to work backwards. So being, let's say the holidays or being with family and thinking about work or things like that. What shows up, I think, when people are engaged in what you were saying is a loss, a feeling of loss,
Mm-hmm.
right? That, oh, I'm here, but I'm not really here, and I'm missing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why does that happen? Well, I think there are a lot of reasons why that can happen, but for our purposes, I think when you were saying, let's say about your work and wanting to have more for your family, do more, grow a business, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's a worry,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if we're sitting together, let's say, or you're sitting with your family and you're thinking about the business, how can I do this better? Oh, there's a issue over here that I think I have to go and solve. Um, some of that is real and some of it isn't,
Yeah.
right? So
Mm-hmm.
the real thing may be something actually malfunctioned in some way and
Yeah.
it needs immediate attention. That would be real.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Um, worrying about not being there, wherever there is, um, would is not real. It's a
Mm-hmm.
worry. It's a thought.
Right. Yeah.
A thought that our emotions follow, and it's a thought that takes us away from whatever we're doing or whoever we're with. Now, why does that thought happen? So, um, sometimes it's poor planning, right?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's just that this is a constant worry or concern or is always going on top of mind. And if it's something for people that is constant, then they're never present, really present.
Mhm.
Like we walk
Yeah.
around and our body is our vehicle. We walk around and we do things and we think things and we, do one thing after the other. And like I'm not a model of presence all the time, but I
Mm.
try. Um, but it's really about a decision. Actually, it's about a choice. And it
Mhm.
takes recognizing that some of the things that we're thinking are not essential to the moment we're in, may not even be essential, let's say, to the business in that moment.
Right.
Um, or we think that thinking about something that may be occurring in the future is preparation, but it isn't.
Mhm.
Preparation is preparation. Preparation is sitting down and saying, okay, I want this team member to do this, and I'm going to make this bullet point list of things that I need to do in order to make sure that happens correctly. But worrying about whether it's going to happen correctly is not preparation, it's worry,
Right.
right?
Mhm.
So, and
Mhm.
it gets confusing because we live in a world that is, we're constantly, unless we shut off a device, we're in constant distraction, we're in constant motion around either our business or what's happening in the world or something that's happening with our family or whatever it might be, all important things. But are they all important every minute is
Mhm.
an important question, right? So
Very good.
it's really there are a few steps to this and people have to kind of learn it or decide to learn it or master it or take some key points from our conversation, right? And go, maybe I'll think about that. Um, but to walk into a space with your family or with a holiday family and make a decision before walking in, they're actually going to pay attention to what's happening right then in that moment, every moment. Here we are, future,
Mhm.
moment here, So
Yeah.
present, future, like all of a sudden our future just happened, right? Now it's in the past. So the idea that um, we have to actually choose where we're putting our attention is
Mhm.
critical
Yeah.
because we are so pulled, right? Now, people who meditate or who, do some form of mindfulness, sometimes that's a little easier. I do a lot of mindfulness work with the people that come to me or in my programs that I run or retreats or things like that.
Right.
Because it's important to be able to feel what it feels like to be still. Right. And maybe,
Wow.
I don't know how much time we'll have, but maybe we'll do the first part of the exercise so that people get an idea
Mhm.
and you can get an idea of what it feels like to actually come into present, like be in the body, right?
Mhm.
Um, but then there are other distractions, right?
Yeah.
Like
Mhm.
especially around the holidays, people who may be seeing people that they haven't relatives they haven't seen in a long time. Maybe there was an issue. Maybe they're not comfortable with everybody. Maybe they're worried about some conversation or something. So the distraction is the worry.
Yeah.
And you know, that takes some attention to think about either preparing, like real preparation, not worry as preparation, like talking
Mhm.
to a professional or if it's a serious issue or talking to a friend or how do I want to or talking to yourself or making a journal note. How do I want to think about this? How do I want to show up? What's my intention? to
I
show
love
up here
that.
with this person, am I
Mhm.
willing to just be present and listen? Am I willing
I
to, um, if I was hurt, say, you really hurt my feelings, but I don't want to be, but I'm here because we're family and I love you and I don't want to be dwelling on that. So I just wanted you to know and I'd like to move on from there. And really, you can't expect an apology. Maybe, but it's up to the person what they are willing, what do they want? What do you, I mean, the individual, what does the individual want out of this?
Mhm.
And it might be that they wanted to show up and be pleasant and not have any kind of conversation and move through the day, but not hold on to that, whatever that discomfort is or that worry is, let it go. But it takes a
Yeah.
decision to do that. It takes preparation
Mhm.
to do that of some sort, but
Yeah.
worry isn't preparation. So worry or being like walking into a room and knowing there's somebody that you might be uncomfortable with takes you away from being present,
Yeah.
right? Because then you're just thinking in your head, even if you're right there, you're not there because you're thinking about what it's like to be there. Or will it be okay to
Right.
be? Or will it be okay to
Mhm.
talk to aunt whatever? Or will it, right? So then all of a sudden we think we're there because we're thinking about being there, but we're not really there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I'm I know that we can I know that there's a much larger conversation, like just
mhm,
with this
mhm,
topic. There's so much more
mhm,
that we can
mhm.
dig deeper into, but I really feel like what you just shared really demonstrated your unique therapeutic approach, of um
Or coaching.
combining, blending that, yeah, blending that mind, body, spirit coaching.
Mhm.
Your unique coaching methodology is clearly distinctive. You just walked us through a coaching session, even though that was not really the plan. And we went more into discussing about being present, and you really touched on that process and the blending of mind, body, soul, and spirit, because I feel like that's the ultimate pinnacle of being present when all those three work together.
Agreed.
Like, so can you share more about your approach and how it's been effective
Mhm,
with
mhm,
the range of clients that you've worked with?
mhm. Yeah. Um, so I'm going to kind of start where we left off a little bit
Mhm.
in talking about presence because um, that was the informational part of a coaching session,
Okay.
right? It wasn't actually, I mean, and part of a coaching session is an informational part, right?
Hmm.
People, so I call a lot of my work psychoeducational because you have to understand, some basic things or come to an agreement about some basic things about human nature or about how people, do things to be able to go deeper,
Right.
right? So then the deeper part of that coaching session might be an example, right, of
Mm.
what the person was thinking about, or what an issue might be with a family member, or, and then taking that to why does that affect that individual in the way that it does?
Hmm.
Because not everybody is affected the same way by the same experience, right? Or the same words, or the same attitudes, or the same situations. So, what is
Right.
unique to them? Um, you know, what shows up for them that really um, is disempowering, empowering? Um, what are the nuances to that? And helping them come into a consciousness by doing mind, body, I'm going to start with body, body, emotion, mind, spirit, ladders, right? So because we our bodies are our messengers. Our bodies tell us when something is going on. We tighten up or we feel free, right? We have a pain or we don't. So the work that I do is using a variety of modalities is very much about um, finding finding that little golden nugget that kind of opens everything up for someone, um, that allows them to approach something very differently. So, for example, um, I, as you know, I have a book coming out and on divorcing well and thriving. So the people who come to me to want to do that differently are really having to look at so many things about one, what's going on in that system, what is it that's personally affecting them so much, that they may have difficulty not being angry or acting that anger out. How can you do this well, right? So there's that group of people that I work with.
Mhm.
Um, there are organizations that I work with where a large piece of my focus, once people are understanding this basic piece, is how does that affect our communication? So with individuals, with relationships, with organizations, with systems, how does this information affect um, how a business deal gets done? How people work together in an organization that's a mission-driven organization. Because communication is our tool, right? Here we are having this interview, right? This conversation, because that's what we've got to share information. And our body language, our what's underneath it, our tone of voice, um, how we the words we choose to use, all represent something going on inside of us. So I like to say, yes, we can learn the right words, we can learn the right tools, but we also have to understand what's happening inside so that we're not projecting something that we don't want to project outside that will tank our mission or tank our conversation, um, and not help us move forward, right? Or help the situation move forward, or the business move forward, or the mission move forward, or the reformation of a family move forward in a healthy way. Um,
Abs-
does that answer your question a bit?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know, and I love that you also mentioned your book because that's
Mm.
the next question. It's very interesting because I have particularly never heard of the concept before. I mean, the way you bring it in terms of divorcing well
Mm.
and navigating divorce with the emphasis on finding peace throughout the process is very unique as well because as we know in just our normal societal structure, divorce tends to be messy and it's commonly stereotypically always not a pleasant thing.
Right.
So the concept of being able to divorce well is quite foreign, I would say, and unique. So, could you share maybe a little sneak peek into this concept approach and how it's going to help readers, viewers handle challenging transitions with greater ease and understanding?
So we'd need a whole interview for that question, but
We
but there is definitely an answer. So, so the book is called Divorce Well and Thrive: Your Guide to Being Your Best Self Under the Worst Circumstances. So based on the previous conversation that we've been having, um, there are a few points that are really important. One is um, believing, one, that it's possible to do something differently than the collective view of it, right? Because many clients that I've had in this situation have said, and I won't use the language, but have said, I can't imagine separating or divorcing being anything but a you know what show, right? Like just a mess. Because it's not even, as you said, for many people, the concept is just, how could that even be, right? People are angry, have heard stories, people expect the worst of each other, people expect that they have to be um, uh, on the defensive and on guard and get the best lawyer and, all of that. So when you can open, when one can open themselves to the idea that this could be done differently, there also needs to be a reason to do it differently, right?
Mm-hmm.
My reason for all people is that they will suffer less, right? That the pain that they will go through by being in the fight and creating more drama or trauma than has already existed potentially will not make them feel better. It will potentially make them feel better in a moment if they think they're going to, quote, win. But the real win, in the book and in my opinion and in my experience actually, is to work together to create a vision, a solution, or even be the only person in the partner working toward this end, that is a healthy vision, uh, a compassionate strategy, a not not taking the bait for a fight, right? Allowing yourself to step back, and this is actually why one of the reasons I developed this technique, to step back and think about what the vision is. It's particularly important if people have children who are sitting there being traumatized by yet another argument, right? So being able to sit back and, let's say the vision is, I want my child to have the least amount of problems from what we're doing here, from deciding to separate, or, if they've already separated, in the back and forth of, from one parent to another. Making that decision, having that vision is like having a pole to hold on to when things start to get a little bit out of control, and go, wait a minute, if I'm going to have that happen, I need to be a certain way right now. Because every action we take, every word we say, every fight we choose, we create a landscape. Just like every fight we don't creates a landscape. So it's not about win or lose here. It's not like if you decide not to fight, you're losing. If you decide, you're going to compromise on something, you're losing. I think it's really important to understand that there's potential for winning in a different way, because everybody ends up, better off from an emotional
Mm-hmm.
standpoint. Even if there are no children, right? There's no reason to, the damage has already been done, right? So why continue it? And it's also possible when people actually sit down and start to listen to each other, try and come up with a solution to how they want to do this. Sometimes they don't even get divorced because they've never actually communicated about what the problem was, because it's too scary. So if they find a
Mhm.
way to actually communicate or get some help or, do some couples work or go to a workshop or a self-help book or whatever, they might be able to move in a different direction.
Right.
So the first part of my book really is called, the first section is, So You Think You Want to Get a Divorce? Because maybe you do and maybe you don't. Have you done all these things? Have you looked at these possibilities? And if you have, okay, great. Then here's some strategic, compassionate thinking to help you move forward in a way that is positive. And then the other sections are on doing that.
I love that. Is that the first chapter?
It's the first
So
section and it's the first chapter.
so you think you want to get a
There's
divorce?
an
I'm
introduction. There is an introduction.
okay.
And then there's,
Okay. I'm really interested to, at some later stage or at some future point, to hear what the feedback or the first reactions are of different people that read the book. So you think you want to get a divorce is. I'm really curious to know what their reactions is. So when
that first
Liz does,
chapter, that first section.
yes, yes.
I
So
can
you
tell
think you,
you, I can tell you actually that, well, I don't know about to that section per se,
yeah,
but we have done an advanced reader copy reader uh, um,
right.
uh, program so that people
Mhm.
who knew about it and really wanted to read the book and could give us feedback, give me feedback, could do it. And the feedback has been phenomenal for the book.
Amazing.
It's been, where was this? And this has helped me, do something I couldn't do for 30 years. And this is something, my children are better off because I'm going to institute these, uh, actions
Yeah,
that, you know,
that's incredible.
so it's really lovely. And there is actually now on online, there's a 30-minute free uh, masterclass on divorcing well, and there's a 4-session course. I mean, people say, "Oh, 4 sessions. How could you do anything in 4 sessions?" Right? And it's not the full, robust. This is everything you need to do, but it's a good crash course on, here are the important elements. Here's what to do. My method uh, and how to look at life post, like in this process of, because it's not just planning this and trying to move through it. It's okay, who am I next? How is this
Hmm.
gonna for me? So that's a piece of that book as well, and the course.
I love that. And I think that everything that you said, it in some ways it ties back to the previous conversation we had about
Yes,
making a decision.
yes, yeah.
And I love that you said a healthy vision, because a part of that healthy vision is making good decisions that
Mhm,
not just benefit you and your happiness, but those around you as well.
mhm, mhm,
And I actually wanted to say when we were diving into the conversation earlier that it takes a great amount of authenticity and vulnerability to
mhm,
have that healthy vision, to be able to make that decision, to want to be better, to want to
mhm.
make the decision to do better by yourself and those around you, even if it's hard, even if
Yeah,
it's
even if
difficult.
you've been hurt or yeah, or you're angry. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think the twist with this, or the trick, is who how how will what happens affect your own suffering or not,
Mm-hmm.
right? Also, it's
Yeah.
if you're pursuing, if someone is pursuing, um and look, this does not necessarily work for every single situation. Every situation is different, and every situation has different needs. There's no one size fits all. However, I think that people have the best chance of creating a better life out of something that may not have been so good when they really look at how they and, you know, their children, let's say, will be affected,
Mhm.
because it gives them a reason, right, to want this to be different. And also, just
Right.
because somebody said it has to be a certain way doesn't mean it has to be that way, right?
Mhm.
Just because everybody says, oh, it's terrible, it's always going to be terrible, there's just wait, so I had the experience of divorcing well, and I wrote the book because a lot of people that I spoke with and practitioners that knew about this asked me to write the book. But I noticed when in doing that process, which I've sort of created it from my work and from my experience, and then turned it into a coaching method because I just could see the deep need for this. Um, that there was always somebody when I would say, well, no, we've actually figured it out, and this is our path, and we're doing fine, would turn around and say, oh, but just wait until you start talking about this, or wait until you start talking about that. And I thought, that's very destabilizing when people do that, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it
Yeah.
focuses on the fear element or what their experience was. And I had
Right.
to say to certain people, you clearly do not, I'm so sorry for your experience. And you don't understand what's happening here. Um, and then I would need to not speak with them
Mhm.
until that process was over. Or maybe you end up choosing different relationships with people who can
Yeah.
actually support what you're doing. So, and be willing to move beyond their own trauma, because
Right.
the people who ask those questions are people who had very bad experiences or had parents who had very bad experiences.
Mhm.
And so see the world as that is, just wait. And,
Just the way
eventually,
it is.
hopefully people heal from that or whatever. But I think for people who want to try, who want to do this, it's not just so smooth sailing. Family members, friends, people are gonna go, oh, it's not possible. But it's very possible. It's very possible.
I'm curious, do you think this book is just for those contemplating getting a divorce, or do you think it's for people in relationships who are going to get married as well? Is this
You
something that
know,
they should read?
yeah, I actually do think that
Mm-hmm.
I think it's for people in all stages of relationship. There's a lot in the book about how to communicate in a relationship and there's a chapter called marriage breakers and marriage keepers. And it really could be relationship breakers, relationship keepers. It doesn't matter if you're married. Um, that really goes deeply into scenarios of um, how things go off course in communication, in relationship, and how
Mm-hmm.
easy it is to bring them back on course. Um, and you know, the one of the reviewers of the book, that's actually in the book, in the very beginning of the book, there's a page of testimonials or endorsements for the book, said this book could be called Live Well and Thrive. It doesn't need to be called it, like the topic is divorce, but really it could be called Live Well and Thrive, because there's so much in it about um, kind of resetting or choosing how you want to show up, and what makes it possible to have better communication, better relationship, how to have a vision, how to have a collective vision with someone, um, breaking the molds of what people think is possible or impossible. So yeah, so I'm curious about why you asked that question, because I'm thrilled that you asked that question.
Yeah, well, I mean, I just know a lot of people who I think when it just comes to relationships across the board can benefit from a book like this
Mhm.
because from the way I see it, it's about amicably resolving the issues in any kind of relationship or friendship, just like you said, just like you mentioned, you know.
Mhm.
So we
Mhm.
could always use a bit more help with learning how to be better friends, be better partners, how to fix the communication gaps.
Yeah.
Like you said, you know, so often we have these traumas and we project them onto other people, like with that
Right,
same example that you just gave
right,
to me.
right.
How can we do it? How can we support the people in our lives who are going through challenges better than just projecting what we might feel based
Right,
on things that happen to us? So
right, right.
I
I had
definitely,
a funny idea when you were saying that, I should say things about the book, like the divorce book about life, for life, like for living.
that's a good one. That's a good one. I mean, I love the name Divorce Bar. It's so
And
striking because
thrive.
it's like,
Thrive is
what?
very important. Divorce well and
Yeah,
thrive.
divorce well and thrive. It's actually shocking because you don't hear that when people speak about divorce, like I said in the beginning, it's always horrific. It's always messy and brutal, and nobody wants to go through with it, you know,
Yeah.
or go
And it's the
through it.
terror, it's the fear of it too, I think, that is so dangerous for people because you know, when we act on fear, we're in survival mode and it's not
Right.
pretty, right? And I think the fear of that also prolongs it, or prolongs, people either being unhappy in a
Yeah.
situation or um, or prolongs the difficulty um, when they're broaching the subject. And
Mm-hmm.
and again, every situation is different. There are some situations that this, will not apply to. But um, but the whole idea of um, being in relationship differently, I think,
Mm-hmm.
consciously in being present. It's like what you just said. So one of the examples I give often with when people talk about, presence or relationship or communication, it's like if we had had a previous conversation, or you had with a friend, or me with a friend had a previous conversation, and something was a little off, but we didn't
Mm-hmm.
talk about it. And then the next time we met for lunch, or we had, a conversation, uh, 9 out of 10 times, that offness, that whatever went wrong, is actually still there in the next conversation, right?
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
And then we're not really talking to the person in the present. We're talking to them as if we're still in that same conversation. But we've never
Right.
said, but we've never said, right? But, but so it's weird. And then these things kind of build, right? Because there was some kind of discomfort, but it didn't get resolved. And then
Mhm.
then there's that gets added on to, because then we're still sort of stuck in that situation. So my suggestion for things like that is to show up to that next conversation or make a phone call. Well, people text, but
Yeah.
somehow connect with the person and say, hey, something seemed off to me. Did it seem off to you? Is there something we need to connect about? right? So that you can clear the air immediately and then be
Address,
present. Or say,
right?
I think I'm still back in that last conversation. Did I upset you, or that really upset me, or whatever? I want to let's be here now, and if we need to resolve that, resolve it, right? So that you're not collecting
Right.
mishaps, right? That's what I mean about presence.
I love that. So many people hesitate to seek help, whether due to stigma or other reasons. And just like the conversation we just had, someone might struggle with bringing up a specific conversation or being direct or facing the matter head on, addressing the elephant in the room. So, what do you think, or what do you believe is essential for individuals to heal? And what advice would you give to someone who's struggling with the decision to just reach out?
So um, I think there's a couple of different answers because there's a couple of different questions in there. One is that I do think it's important to, uh, if it's someone who's struggling to reach out for help, I think it's important to know what the struggle is. Like if it's a stigma issue, or they don't know where to go, or they want to make sure it's private, or things like that. And I think in our culture, I hope anyway, it seems to me we've evolved a lot around um, getting help of some kind. And we kind of addressed different kinds of things people could do previously in our conversation, like coaching or support groups, or, organizations that deal with something they're worried about. But I think, um, I think it's scary to admit that maybe, as individuals, we don't have all the answers. And um, because maybe that feels like makes us feel more powerless. But I think there's a huge strength in recognizing when we don't have all the answers and we really need to get some information or get some assistance in how to solve a problem or feel better. Um, if we go back to the couples thing, people who reach out for couples therapy or counseling, um, have the advantage of having a neutral party in the room. So that's really helpful. I think with friendship and being worried about bringing something up, and I really think in all situations, coming from the heart, coming from neutrality, coming from, I just want to make this, hope that this can be better and hope that you can hear me. It doesn't guarantee that the person will hear. It doesn't guarantee that the problem will be solved. But if the problem is there and will affect a friendship forever, then you really have to decide if it, you know, what in that friendship is healthy, and what is serving you and what isn't, and um, maybe other decisions end up getting made. But I think it's always worth um, coming from a place of love and being honest and caring and compassionate in how you broach something that might be hard to talk about, because that person knows it too. On some level, they know there's something going on, um, and they probably would rather be comfortable than uncomfortable too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. So, to wrap up, I would like to know, is there a favorite quote or a piece of wisdom that has guided you throughout this wonderful journey that you'd like to share with our readers and viewers?
You know, um, there is one, and it's from very early in my clinical training. And it has to do with art therapy. And when I was in graduate school and I was doing a practicum at an important hospital, and um, I was very worried if I was doing what I was doing correctly. And um, and I was worried because I was working with very ill people. Um, and I had not had that experience before. I was worried about their responses to anything I would do. And my wonderful clinical supervisor said to me, go back to the art, because we were doing art therapy. And because in the art, both the therapist and the person who was in the therapy session um, are present in that moment and focused on what actually needed to be done, which was some process of healing through the art, hopefully. And um, it was such an important lesson about being present in the moment. And so when I look back on that, when I'm not, in that moment as a young clinician, I needed not to be thinking about me.
Right.
I needed to be thinking about that person and, what we were doing. And so, in all of the whole stream of conversation that you and I have been having, it's really about that. It's really about coming together with oneself and with another individual or group of people and being not in our heads, but in our hearts and our bodies, present in the moment, paying attention. And there have been other quotes and other things that have, and in the end ended up all affecting my work in terms of um, this sense of knowing, what's going on inside and being in communication with that so that there could be mastery and then there could be presence and then there could be actual authentic communication for me and someone, me and the world, and the people that I work with and the world and their significant others. Because that's how we really show up and relate to each other. And I'm so glad that you focused on something earlier where you said, it's really about the decision, because so much of it is about choice, right? Which is why my original business was called Your Inspired Choices, because I feel like there's that
Yeah.
connection, right? Really present,
Right.
then we have that inspiration and we make an appropriate choice for that situation.
Mhm.
So that's my answer
I
to that
love
one.
that. Thank you so much, Liz. I love that. And thank you so much for your time, for sharing your guidance, your wisdom. And we are definitely looking forward to your book. So, we're also going to leave Liz's information in the YouTube description and also on the blog. And you can get in touch with her, visit her websites, follow her on her socials, and get in touch. If something resonated with you, um, feel free to do that. Any last words from your end, Liz?
Um, I did, yes, actually, just so people know, because it probably won't, we didn't talk about it. There's a wonderful new course that I've just put online called
Okay.
Enlightened Communication Through Luminous Living.
All
And
right.
it's really a lot about teaching um, how to do a lot of the things that we've been talking about, how to get in touch with
Mm.
the parts of self, get in touch with that central core self, and then take that out. So
Right.
that's coming up very soon.
Super. So excited for you. And thank you so much again for your time and having you on the series. And we're looking forward to everything that lies ahead.
And thank you. It's such a pleasure having this conversation with you.
Thanks, Liz, and to all of our viewers. Till next time.